Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Wayne.
And this is NFGeeks. All right, Wayne, thanks again for being on NFGeeks.
Cool.
All right, so for this episode, I like I was just saying a few minutes before we started, I'm gonna take you off the leash and let you run around. You certainly have a good sort of ideas about typology. You have all sorts of ideas and criticisms and connections and all that. And so I thought this would be an opportunity for you to go on and, I know you've done this in your own videos and posts and things like that, but this is sort of an opportunity for you to do it on NFGeeks, and then I can, ask you questions and that kind of thing.
Okay.
All right, so actually this is going to be like the past question about faith. And then briefly I want to know is how did you get into typology? How did this all start with you?
Oh, okay. That actually, I think it's kind of an interesting story myself. Because, I took my very first, supposed MBTI quiz, which probably was nothing like the real MBTI, way back in maybe 15 years ago or so. I just found it on the internet and took it and tested as ISTJ. Read the description of ISTJ and I guess that's kind of me. I don't know, whatever, and I just kind of blew it off just because didn't resonate me at all. Obviously, because it wasn't correct. And then I counted a few variations of the MBTI over the years. People pass it around as internet memes or whatever and say, hey, I'm this. What are you? And I would get different results every time I took it, and I would get ISTJ or INTJ. I think I didn't get ISTP until maybe 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so it's always been something that I've been aware of. I know what a Myers-Briggs type is just because I'd seen it so many times, and never really interested me because I couldn't quite relate to it, nor could I really figure out what I really was. And I didn't have, I didn't really have anyone any experts to help me, nor did I really seek anyone out. Didn't really see any relevance to my life. And I think finally, I was just, maybe a year ago, a little more than a year ago, I was bored and looking up stuff on YouTube, and I don't remember exactly what I was looking for, but it was somewhat, it was MBTI related, and I was searching for, I think I was just searching for ISTJ because I still thought I was ISTJ at the time. Mm-hmm. And I actually came across Pneumoceptor's videos, Amber.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah. And
I've been on Pneumoceptor, yes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
So, yeah.
She's really in love with me. I don't know if anyone realizes that on YouTube. It's okay, I understand. She doesn't express it, but that's because it's so deep in her heart. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So, yeah, she has this video. It's called Ode to the ISTJ, and I think that's how I was doing search, and I came across her video where she's talking about her close friend who's an ISTJ, talking about all her friends good qualities, and I was watching it and thinking that does not sound like me at all, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm probably not really an ISTJ. What is going on here? I know I've gotten other results on these tests. And I think that was the moment that kind of pushed me to say, okay, what is my actual type? Because I know I'd seen other videos where people had said, your type doesn't change. You're born with it. It's your natural preferences, and so I knew then that that I probably do have an actual type. It's not a thing that changes every time I take the test.
Right.
I just didn't know what it was, and I wasn't curious enough to figure it out until that moment. I said, okay, I'm definitely not an ISTJ, so what am I? So I did some more research, found other YouTube videos, and found Personality Cafe. Finally started asking questions and they have the What's My Type thread, where they try to post like a questionnaire and have you answer their questions, and people try to figure out your type. And of course, at the time, I didn't know that those people really don't know what they're talking about. They have varying degrees of typology knowledge on there, but there are people who know what they're doing, and plenty of people who don't know what they're doing. At the time, I was clueless. I was just deciding, I'll just ask them what these people think I am, and to a lot of them, I was still coming across as ISTJ, which I thought was kind of interesting. And but what's funny is, like, half the people said ISTJ and half of them said ISTP, and the ones who were answering ISTP were the ones who sounded like they knew what they were talking about. Like they would give actual reasons, like, I think you sound like you're using introverted thinking, and I hear you using extroverted sensing here. And the people who were saying ISTJ were just kind of like, they just wanted to say they were right from the get-go, and they were and that was when they started to talk about the functions, and I didn't know anything about the functions at the time, and I wasn't really interested yet. But it just really came. Those are the people who were telling me I need to learn the functions, and so I did some more research on the functions, looked up more YouTube videos about what does SI mean, what does SE mean. Got a little bit more confused at first, and got a little bit more frustrated. And I think what finally nailed it for me, when I was trying to, I guess my goal at the time wasn't just to figure out my type. It was to try to figure out why this is so hard for me. Like, because I hear so many people talk about, like they figured out their INFJ and it totally fit. They never tested as anything else. I kind of wonder, why are so many people so into this, and why is it like such a big part of their lives? And here I am having so much difficulty figuring out my type, and I finally realized the whole reason I've been mistyping all this time is, especially the J versus P preference, is because the reason I lean toward J is because that was my upbringing. Like I was raised by an SJ mom, and I think my dad is an ISTP, and I could get into those reasons later. But it was basically my mom who raised me, and kind of impressed these SJ values on me about getting doing your work first before play, and getting a good education and getting a good job and having financial security. And I didn't have like any and I had SJ friends growing up too, and so I didn't really have a reason to kind of question those values, and so I kind of took on those values, even though my natural tendency was towards SP values. Once I realized that, everything just kind of clicked, and ISTP just fit everything. I understood that the reason I wasn't quite drawn to ISTP descriptions was because they have like ISTP hobbies and interests that I don't identify with. Like motorcycles and skydiving and extreme sports and fixing cars. Those are things that I don't identify with. And once it was explained to me, those are just kind of stereotypes that don't necessarily define an ISTP, I was like, okay, well that explains that. Once I was able to get past those barriers, I was like, okay, this makes a lot more sense. And then the cognitive functions made a lot more sense, and I think once I was able to figure out, like, this is how the functions work and this is how you figure out the functions of each type, I was like, oh, I see the pattern here. Then it became like actually interesting to me, and that's kind of like where I stuck with it, and I learned about all the other types, and kind of found other types on YouTube, other like INFJ videos and INTP videos, and I was like, oh wow, this actually makes a lot more sense than it did before. So that's kind of like what made me stick with it, and yeah. wasn't expecting to get this interested in it, but yeah, that's kind of like how it just kind of evolved.
Wow. All right, so that's a fascinating story. Let's talk about Kiersey. What do you think of Kiersey? You have some different ideas. You mentioned them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was a little off on SP and all that. So what are your impressions? Good, bad? Where do you stand?
I was okay. So I'll admit I was anti-Kiersey for a little bit for a while, just because of the whole, like, you know, I didn't identify with any temperament to begin with, and I know people like there are a lot of people who say, well, if you want to figure out somebody's type, first try to figure out which temperament they are, which of the 4 temperaments they fit into, and then you can narrow it down from there. And the thing is, for me, that wouldn't have worked, because when I used to read the SP descriptions, and I didn't identify with it at all. You know, it wasn't. Looking back now, it's not the description that was faulty. It was just my impression of it, because SP to me, you know, being the whole theme of freedom and being an artisan, you know, those are just not values that I was raised with. You know, I was, you know, like I said, I had an SJ mom who raised me with SJ values, so I kind of identify with, you know, the SJ guardian temperament, and you know, being loyal. Those sounded like good qualities to me. And then looking at the NT values, like, you know, being rational, that was something that kind of appealed to me. And yeah, and when I looked at SP, I was like, well, you know, it's this SP. You know, I don't. It's more like I didn't want to identify with SP, and so I just kind of avoided it. But I think if you're dealing with a person like me, it's best to have like somebody else, like a practitioner, kind of guide the person through it, and kind of like dispel any of those myths about.
You're preaching to the converted, believe me.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, like, you know, I can see where Kiersey kind of makes sense about having these 4 temperaments, and how they relate to each other, and how they differ from each other. So I've been, you know, I'm a little bit more open to Kiersey's ideas now. But yeah, it's just his wording that I kind of, like, you know, still have minor issues with.
Well, that's interesting. I think he was an NT. Maybe that had something to do with it. I'm not sure that I forget what he was, but I think he was an NT. That might be the case. All right, what's something in typology in general that you think is off? What is something, or people's view of is off? What's something that you sort of think, you know, we should look at this way or that way, or, you know, where does your critical eye point to?
I guess one would be I don't know. I think you recently talked about the function fetish.
Yeah. Everybody's got something to say about that, boy. Whew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. No.
I mean, I have nothing against the functions. You know, that was how I came to become interested in typology, and how I figured out my type. I know there are a lot of views about the functions that I think are, you know, are like kind of half truths, because there are people who say, you know, just, you know, who would say, learn the functions, that's how you figure out your type, and well, that's, I kind of half agree and half disagree, because if you just tell somebody learn the functions, they're just going to go off and learn the functions on their own and learn some wrong things about the functions. I think that's kind of like what leads to mistypes. On the other hand, if you're talking to like an expert in the cognitive functions, like someone who really knows the functions and what they're really talking about, I think a person like that could actually help determine a person's type. So I think, so yeah, but then again, I could say the same thing about Kiersey's temperaments. Like, if you say learn the temperaments, you know, a person like me would have gravitated toward the wrong temperaments at first. But if you have an expert on the temperaments, that person could guide the person toward their correct type. So I think that's kind of I guess my general issue would be people trying to learn their type on their own would be kind of something that I kind of have a beef with. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Yeah. MBTI. The indicator itself. Okay, I'll just be upfront. I have not taken the real official MBTI.
Okay.
So I know that's something you've been preaching a lot. Take the real MBTI.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone knows that, so that's okay.
Yeah. So
everyone knows that I say that. That's what I meant.
Yeah, and because I've never actually taken it, I can't say anything about it. Whether I agree with it or not. I know everyone has their opinion about the human metrics test.
Well, that's for sure.
It is the first thing that comes up when you Google personality test. That's something that I think is a problem, because that's what leads to like the general population just kind of taking. I know you always say if you're taking the human or any MBTI test, take it. Think about what your natural preferences are. Don't look at who you wish you were or how you behave in certain situations. Well, the problem is, if somebody's just encountering the human metrics test on Google, they're not going to know those things. They're just going to, especially a censor is going to answer each question literally. And that's why when I take the human metrics test, I still test as ISTJ. That's, of all the online tests, the common ones, that's human metrics is the only one that still tells me I'm an ISTJ. I can kind of see where you're coming from, where they ask enough questions where if you know what they're really asking, yeah, it can kind of balance out and lead the person toward the right type. But if a person doesn't know what the questions are asking, they just might ask, well, I don't know what this question is. It could go either way. I don't know what my preference is. But pick one. So I think human metrics can just if they don't know what they're doing, just taking it on their own. It can really easily lead to a lot of mistypes, and I think if anything, I wish either the questions were worded better, or they had better instructions right there on the front page, telling you how to answer the questions, or what not to do when answering these questions. I think if it was presented better, it would probably be a better online test, just to pass on to your friends and say, hey, take this test and tell me what you are.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have. So thank you, Wayne. Let's go on to our final episode.
Okay.
All right.